It's a great day. My name is Shay Brown, the happy entrepreneur, and welcome to the Happy Entrepreneur Show, the number one business development and revenue focused late night show in the country where we're on a mission. And our mission really is to inspire, but our mission is also to empower. And our mission is to provide you, the entrepreneur, with all of those resources that are necessary to execute that huge vision that you have for the people you were called to serve. And we have the one and only today, Robert B. Foster, who showed up to help you. What's going on, Robert? How are you?
I am doing well as always. Thanks again for the invite.
Hey, man, you are a returning guest. You've been on the Happy Entrepreneur Show more than once, so glad to have you back. Had a chance to connect with you recently. And I know today we're going to be chatting about, using stories to really elevate your greatness. I understand that. But there's some folks that are on here, they're like, okay, Shay, here we go with telling stories again. Take a moment and ask Robert a very simple question, which is why is using stories more important now for where we are in history than ever before?
It's more important now because society is trying harder than ever before to put everyone into a box and to have people thinking the same, feeling the same, acting the same. And we're not the same. We all have unique experiences, and we can take something like the word vacation, and that word will mean 50 different things to 50 different people. So when we talk about telling your own story, it's how do you view the world? Like, what have you gone through? How are you able to get through it? And that's what makes you relatable to other people. So in telling those stories, you become a better connector, and then people are going to be inspired by the stories that you share.
Now, can I just, I'm not going to play devil's advocate, I hate to use that word, but can I just, on someone's mind right now, I'll say on Shay Brown's mind, it's kind of like, okay, Robert, there's my life stories, and then I'm an entrepreneur. And how do you know, what stories to tell that are from my personal life that maybe shouldn't be relevant in business? So here's the question. What's one story, type of story, if I can use that category, that every entrepreneur really needs? And then what's one, two, or three ideas that they can use to tell that story? Does that make sense? Because I'm trying to get to the entrepreneurs, Robert, that are dualpreneurs, that work a full-time job, that also are a full-time entrepreneur. There also might be a wife, might be a husband, might have kids, and they've got so many stories. They're like, Shay, where do I start?
Well, it goes back to what I said after the first question. It's about relatability. So, like, the more that you're in touch with your own personal life stories, you'll know which ones to tell and at which time. Like, for example, I had a bad knee injury where I was told I would never run or jump again. And I can tell that one story in probably 15 different ways. It could be a story of overcoming, it could be a story of defying the odds, it could be a story of building resilience, believing in yourself, following your own path, and that's all with the same story. It's all in how you tell it. So who you're speaking to at the moment is going to decide which one you tell and how you tell it. For example, there's a young man that I'm working with in track and field. He does the triple jump, and his best jump when I met him was, I believe, it was 35 feet 4 inches. So I made some tweaks to his form and taught him some things I knew about the triple jump. But then I said to him, now it's up to you. And then I shared a story of when I had that aha moment where the coaches can't teach me anything else. It's up to me now. And I just shared that story of how I was able to dig down, and I ended up breaking a record that I held for 24 years. And I just found out last Saturday. Sadly, I wasn't at that meet because I was at the girls' meet, and he jumped 41 feet 5 inches. This young man improved by 6 feet. And it wasn't from, I mean, yeah, the things I taught him about the triple jump had something to do with it, but it was me sharing that story related to him. Because if I just said I'm a former All American, I'm a former record holder for 2 days, like people aren't gonna initially identify with that. But the fact where I told him, as I was skinny, I hit my growth spurt late. I didn't believe in myself. I kept worrying about my competition. I focused on everyone other than me and my own gifts. So to directly answer your question about how does that apply to entrepreneurs, is you became an entrepreneur because you have a gift. And then too many times we let outside distractions and outside negativity cloud your judgment, and it knocks you off of what your path is. So by telling your stories and focusing in on your gifts, you're going to better your business and you're going to better your customers and your clients.
They're wondering, who is this Robert B. Foster and where does this passion come from, right? So, ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, I'm going to get back into asking, how do you tell a story about your product without sounding like you're bragging, or, how do you tell a story about how you got started? Let's just let Robert maybe role model. I know this might not be fair, Robert. I get that. But folks might want to know, how did you get, where did this all come from? This passion of you helping other folks be able to share their story as they step into their greatness when, you're a family man. You have children. You're also a fitness expert. You got it. You're also an athlete. And now you're helping people with stories. Can you bring it together for us, please, so we kind of understand the backstory that led you to where you are?
So when I help people with story creation, one of the first things I help them realize is that you don't have to learn anything new. Whatever your superpower is, it's already buried in your subconscious mind. So where it surfaced for me, when I go back to my junior year in high school, I was on a track team, and we were in the Class B championships. And so one of the city schools, they were heavily favored to win. Now they had a lot of stars on their team, but our team was deeper. We just had many more people, and just our talent went deeper. So we knew their stars were going to do what they did. But I was running around that track once I found out that our scores were really close. Like we might be able to beat these guys. And I went around just hyping up the rest of my teammates. I was like, look, so and so is going to get first, but you two can get second and third. If we do that, then we'll be right there in the points race. And it came all the way down to the 4x4, and we had the entire team around cheering on. And typically back then, tracks kind of, you do your event and then you go home. But like the entire team stayed for the entire meet. And it was right then where subconsciously, that was where I realized, like, I have a gift for inspiring other people. And so between myself and the coaches, I don't want to take full credit for it. Going into my senior year, I was captain of the team now, and that was my mission. Like, my mission was to get everyone to believe in themselves. And then I transitioned into the workforce. I was managing restaurants, and same thing, just teaching everyone to be the best version of themselves. And so it wasn't until I was well into my 30s where I realized, like, this is a career. Like, I can have a career doing this, because being a college dropout, I thought you had to have a degree or these fancy certifications and all this other stuff, and you don't. All you have to do is just share your life stories, like share your experiences, things you've gone through, how you've gotten through them, and help people get crystal clear on what it is they want to accomplish in their future. And boom, there it is.
Boom, there it is. Boom, there it is. How do you deal with sharing a story where, you failed? Something went wrong without being embarrassed, or, sometimes, we don't want people to know, that side of us that wasn't the Instagram side, it wasn't the Facebook side. So take a moment, if you would. And I guess here's the question. Where was a time that something happened in your life that you do share through a story? There might have been some pain, might have been some anguish, but you're still able to share. So two-part question. One, has it happened to you? Obviously. And number two, how do you share that without feeling like, oh my gosh, they're going to be laughing at me. Oh my gosh. 'Cause I know I felt that way. And I still do about some of my stuff that's happened to me. Over to you, man, to kind of help the audience understand, telling the story where you're not the hero, you're the zero.
So anyone that has experience in anything you gain that experience through getting knocked down. It happens to everyone. Like there's not one person that's gone through their entire life who hasn't gotten knocked down at one point. And it just goes back to teaching a toddler how to walk. Like they fall 100 times before they finally get it. And that's the same in everyday life. Like we all deal with it. So for me personally, there's tons. Like I probably have a solid 100 that I can pull from right off the top of my head. But one of the biggest ones was my senior year in high school. I was heavily favored to win the high jump in the state meet. I was undefeated the entire season. And I don't want to say no one got close, but I won pretty handily every single meet. And so leading up to that state meet, it had rained that day, so the high jump surface was very slick. And my father, and I'm not blaming my father, like, but my father got me the wrong size spike. He was supposed to get me 1/4 inch pyramid, and he got me eighth inch some spike. So they're smaller. Like with the 1/4 inch pyramid, it would have held up with the wet surface a little bit better. But anyway, what happened was I ended up getting in my head, right? Instead of just, if I was level headed like I am now, I would have just went to someone else who had 1/4 inch spikes and asked to borrow them for my competition. But instead, I let the emotions get the best of me. I blamed my father, and I ended up not winning the state championship. And now that doesn't seem like it's a big deal to some people, but like I sacrificed girlfriends, I sacrificed fun, I sacrificed a lot training for that moment. And when it didn't happen, it was probably a solid decade before I really got over it. And how did I get over it? I started coaching and I started sharing my story of taking my eye off the prize. And instead of being embarrassed that I went undefeated the entire season and then blew it when it mattered the most. Because like that's all that was swirling around in my head. And now there's other much deeper things that I've dealt with, like with the passing of my father or my 2-year-old nephew passing away. Like there's other things more painful, but that one just from a personal core level, because I worked for years to become the best in that sport. And then to not meet that expectation, it sent me, I don't want to say it sent me down to a dark path. Like I wasn't doing drugs or hurting myself or anything, but just I was in a bad mental headspace. And as I said, it took me a solid decade before I got over it. So again, to directly answer your question, when we're talking about stories, people don't just want to hear the good stuff. If you have $1 million home and you're driving a BMW and your kids are in private school, people don't want to hear that right out of the gate, especially if there's someone who's struggling. They want to hear, if you talk about Mark Cuban, the billionaire owner of the Mavericks, he tells the story where he slept in his van when he started his first software company. I believe it was a software company, but he started in his van. His first apartment, he didn't even have furniture. And like he talks about how he built himself up to where now he has private jets and he's the owner of multiple sports franchises and stuff. But like if you don't tell that beginning story, people will just assume you were handed something or you come from privilege and you grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth. So sharing those stories of struggle, it makes people relate to your story more and it makes them dial into what you're trying to tell them.
Yeah. How do you go about implementing in the story emotion? And I'll say that because today's time, we want to talk to two type of entrepreneurs. I'm going to ask them to share two different ways. One, for the person that has to do this through a digital platform. And so they have to share a story. They want to employ the emotional piece, but they're not there with the audience. It's important because there could be a speaker, could be an author, could be a trainer, could be someone network marketer, but they're using this digital space. So that's question number one is how do you be able to bring that emotion and that same energy when you're doing it digitally versus a live audience where you can feel the energy, right? You can see their faces. You can see the smile. You're like, I got him. Through the power of these fiber optic lines, like right now, you and I, we can't do this. We know they're there, but we can't do it. So here's the question for Robert, and you guys are all listening to Robert B. Foster. He likes to be connected with on Facebook. So you're like, wow, how do I find this guy? How do I connect with him? Just go to Robert B. Foster on Facebook, Robert B. Foster on Facebook. You can Instagram him, you can message him, you can send him something, and you can read all about what he's doing. But here's the question. How do I take that same emotion, that same energy, and transfer it, well, through the power of these fiber optic lines?
All right, so before I dive into that, I missed the second part of your last question where you talked about facing embarrassment, right? And then
Yes.
I'll tie that into this question as well. So embarrassment stems from insecurity, right? And people don't like to hear that, but that's what it is. Like when you get up on stage, and if you make a mistake, and the people who have the confidence know how to just roll with that mistake. Like, as you know, on my show, I broadcast live. There's no editing. So if there's any mistakes at all, we just roll with the punches, because that's just me. That's my style. You know, the name of my show is Shut Up and Grind. So that just means no matter what happens, you just keep moving forward. So if you're worried about embarrassment, is because you don't have full belief in your craft yet. Now, that if you're a new speaker, that just comes in time. And if you're a seasoned speaker, right, you want to focus more on what your message is versus on what if I make a mistake, right? Because if your message is firm, you can easily overcome making a mistake very, very easily. And so, going to tying it in emotion and energy, this is something I actually learned. I went to a speaker boot camp in 2017 with Eric Thomas. He's one of the top motivational speakers in the world. And there were 41 people there. And Eric Thomas himself was actually there on day two when I had my turn to speak. We each had 10 minutes. And my thought process was, I'm going to shove as much information into these 10 minutes as I can, and thinking I'm gonna blow the doors off of this opportunity. And so as I'm listening to other people talk, I'm like, I'm better than this one. I'm better than this one. Better than this one. You know, not like in a cocky way, just like from a professional speaking kind of way. I was like, all right, I delivered better than this one. I have better stage presence than this one. So now it's my turn to talk, and I get up there, and in my mind, I rocked it. Right, everything just went great. So the next day, I'm flying back from Atlanta. I land in Boston. I'm down here in Rhode Island. So I'm driving back down, and I get a phone call from Eric Thomas's CEO. And he says, Robert, first I want to thank you for coming down. He's like, I got to tell you, he's like, you are far and away the most polished speaker there. And so at first, I'm driving, but I'm smiling, smiling because that's positive feedback. But then there was a pause. And as you all know, nothing good ever follows the pause. So he says to me, but you're my most frustrating type of student. And so I took a deep breath. And I was like, all right, I'm listening. And so he said, I can tell that you've told that story hundreds of times. He's like, it was polished. He said, but it was too polished. He said it was so polished that there was no emotion in it whatsoever. Because I told a part where my ex was pregnant with my twin boys, and I had gotten fired from my job when I think she was due in 7 weeks, I want to say. And so I told him that I had called her, and I didn't spend too much time on it because, again, my thought process was get as much information into the 10 minutes as possible. Where he told me, he's like, you got to slow that down. He's like, what was going through your mind when you first found out that you were losing your job and your boss handed you your final check? Like, were you nervous to call and speak to your wife? What was the tone in her voice when she was listening to you explain to her what happened? He's like, when you got home and you walked in and you looked her in her eyes, what was that initial connection like? He's like, you got to slow down. You got to break it down. He said, and let people feel what you went through. Now, this is a guy who's working with one of the top speakers in the world. So obviously I took that information, and it completely transformed how I deliver my speeches. Like when I speak about my dad, and from when we did the making of an entrepreneur filming, and that segment where I was talking about my father, I got choked up. And
Yeah.
people, especially men, are of the stigma that we're not supposed to cry, we're not supposed to show emotion. But it's when you can get in front of other people and speak from the heart, regardless of what happens because of it. You might cry, you might have to stop for a second to let your breathing regulate again, but people are going to feel that, right? People are going to feel that, and they're going to lean into your story more. Like when you share authentically from the heart, from the depths of your soul, no one's going to be scrolling on their cell phone. They're going to be dialed into your story. So if you're afraid to tell something because you might cry, you're actually doing a disservice, because there's someone else who's listening, who's
Mhm.
going through something, and they're afraid to tell it. And by you getting up there and being vulnerable, you're letting that person know it's okay for you. I'm here to listen to you.
You know, one thing that I admire about you is your willingness to adapt, your willingness to change. He's sharing some very advanced points here. Um, Robert, how can folks best connect with you? I want to share that one more time. And then, what type of individuals do you work with to help them with their story? So it's a two-part question. One, how can they connect with you? And number two, what type of individuals does your company work with to help them be able to use their life story to step into their greatness?
So the best way to connect with me is through Facebook Messenger. And if you're one of the few that aren't on Facebook, you can email me, rob@robertbfoster.com. Pretty easy to remember. And when it comes to story creation, I believe it or not, I took the principles that I use with my fitness clients. I came up with a 7-step process for to get people to lose weight, gain muscle, run a faster 5K. Like that 7-step process, it works regardless of what their fitness goal is. And so I just took those 7 steps and I just transferred it into story creation. Because like if you wanna lose weight, you have to start with your current circumstance. Like what's your current weight, what's your current measurements, how much water are you currently taking in each day, what's your nutrition like? And if you want to create a story, the first thing is what happened? What did you learn from what happened? Who needs to hear what happened? Are you prepared to talk about how you got through it? Are you prepared to relive what happened if you're going through something like trauma or PTSD, right? Then the second step is you got to eliminate all the excuses right up front. And I tell people on the fitness end, right, you got to drink enough water, you got to get enough steps in, and you just go right down the list of what's required. I don't want to hear time, I don't want to hear kids, I don't want to hear money, I don't want to hear any of this stuff. If you want to make it work, this is the commitment that's needed. And it's the same thing with storytelling. If you have stage fright, if you're afraid of embarrassment or the fear of judgment, or you're not spending enough time practicing telling your story, you're not going to be successful. So like I'm not going to go through all 7 now, but I just took those principles, going back to what I said earlier. You don't need to learn anything new. Whatever you have that's already in your subconscious mind, you can tailor that story to fit any industry. And if we have time, I want to tell you quickly. I was speaking with someone the other day and I said, I can equate my knee rehab to a woman who's 9 months pregnant. And he like flew off the deep end. He's like, no way. He's like, there is no way you can relate those two stories. I said, because here's the difference. When you're just talking to someone, you're telling them what happened. When you're storytelling, you're sharing how you got through it. Right. So you're just looking at the comparison of me hurting my knee to a woman being 9 months pregnant. Where you relate the two is every single day there's something that you have to do to get through that day. So like for me with my knee, I have to ice, I have to elevate, I have to take my medication, I have to walk with a walker or crutches. And for that woman who's pregnant and her feet are swollen and her back is hurting, and maybe there's pressure on her bladder and she's got to pee every 5 seconds. Like each one is going through a struggle that they have to get through every single day. And that's the part that's relatable. So too many times we get stuck on the what, but the power in the story is the how you got through it.
How you got through it is the point. We're talking to the one and only Robert B. Foster. He's sharing with you how you can use your life stories. And I like that. He didn't say you had to memorize someone else's story. He didn't say you had to go do research, come up with the story. He's saying, look, I can specialize in taking the stories that are already inside of you, your own life experiences through your own journey, and allow you to share that with the world that allows you to step into your greatness. Robert, if you can, how do you develop this mindset? Because, one shift and change, even in telling stories, you have to have the right mindset. You have to have the right focus. So the question is, how are you able to master your mind to adapt? Because for some folks, implementing stories are going to be fun, but it's a little outside their comfort zone, right? But it's within their grasp if they'll reach out and grasp it. But it will take a mindset shift. It's going to take a mindset change because now this is something they've consciously have to be able to do. and you only get better through practicing. So my question to you is, how do you continue to expand your comfort zone? And then how do you have the right mental mindset to be able to say, okay, I'm going to do something that I'm not used to doing. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to trust the process. And that's the question. Mindset to trust the process.
Yep. So there's many different things out there on mindset. And I'm not going to say that what I'm about to share is the only way, because people are motivated by different things and in different ways. For me, I always tell people get to who you are and what you are at your core. Strip away the titles, strip away that you're a CEO or you're a boss or you're a speaker or you're a parent or a grandparent. Strip away all of those hats and titles. What's left? And I found when I did that, what's left is that I'm an athlete. Right. So athletes are competitors, especially once you're in, when you're a good to elite athlete. It's like you think differently, you train differently, you prepare differently, and you adapt differently. So what is it that drives you? That's the question. So for me, it was athletics. For someone, it could be science. Like if science is your thing, look at whatever it is you're doing through that scientific lens, because that's who you are at your core. If math is your thing, if art is your thing, right? It doesn't matter what your thing is. People struggle with mindset because they're trying to be something they're not. That's what I found in my experience. And as I work with people and as I interview people, even on my podcast, and I speak with a lot of seasoned speakers, and at the end of the shows, probably 75% of the time, people always tell me I've never shared that on a public forum before. Because I get people to go deep into their subconscious mind and I help them pull those stories out, the ones that are really going to relate to other people. I had someone from the Philippines message me talking about how inspired they get from the way I interview the guests. And again, that's what it's about. It's about me. I step into who I am. Like I'm a competitor. So with every person I get in front of, I'm like, I want to get every bit of info that I can out of this person, because I look at it through that lens. So again, what lens are you looking at life through, and step into that. Don't worry about what your mama wants you to think or how your husband or wife wants you to think, how your coworkers, siblings. It's about you. Who are you at your core? And then step into that mindset.
I love it. How can people best connect with you again?
Yep, either on Facebook at rfoster74 or at Robert B. Foster. I have two different pages on Facebook. Or you can email me, rob@robertbfoster.com.
Man, this is wonderful. We have a segment here, Robert, called Today is My January 1st. And for those folks that are family that are here every night with us at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can go and say those magical words. Today is my January 1st. And for those folks that are new, that are tuning in for the very first time, today is my January 1st is one of our personal mantras. And this is, I guess it's the belief that we believe that every day is a January 1st. And today is my January 1st means you get a fresh start. It means you get a do-over. It means your past back there no longer equals your future, and that you don't have to wait till December 31st at 11:59 p.m. on the back of a napkin to say, well, I think I'm going to get started now. I think I'm going to get back in the game. No. I'm going to wait till that moment. No, today is your January 1st, as long as you have oxygen going through your lungs. So my question to Robert is, when you hear those words, today is my January 1st, what do you hear? And number two, what was one of your January 1st moments for you?
What I would say is walk away from whatever's not serving you. Just walk away, no matter how hard it is, no matter how embarrassing it may be, because as you know, I'm pulling out of one of those moments right now, right? My January 1st was this past February 20th. I was in a situation that was not serving me. It was causing me a lot of mental distress. It was causing me financial distress. And just on that day, I dropped the keys on the desk and I said, this is not working for me anymore. Like, I can't do this. I'm back living with my mom for a bit. Again, back to one of those things, like, how do you share things without embarrassment? Like, I'd be embarrassed if I was living in a dog shelter or something. I'm not embarrassed to be living with the woman that gave me life. All right. I'm fortunate that she opened her doors up again and allowed myself and my oldest daughter to come back here so I can get back on the mend and get back on the rebound. But one of the mottos I always say is, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? So I already knew that I can come back from this, and I knew that I could walk away, even though I was leaving money on the table, I was leaving my reputation, or putting my reputation at risk, because I had to walk away from my fitness clients as well. And that was a tough thing to do. Some of them have been with me 10, 11, 12 years, 5, 6, 7 years. So I've had relationships with these people, but the overall situation, it wasn't serving me, it wasn't serving my children, and we had to get out of there. So it was a very, very tough decision, but you're never gonna move forward, like a ship can't sail if the anchor is down. And so whatever is anchoring you down, you got to make that decision that you're not going to allow that anymore. Like, people talk about finding your why all the time, and that's true, not knocking that. You got to find your why, but you also got to find that why to let go of what's holding you back.
That's one of the things that I admire about you, man. Is your not only your ability to be resilient, but your openness and your willingness to share as you are learning. And one of the things that really stands out about Robert is his ability to be able to tell you his perspective, to take you inside of his head, and you feel like you're there with him, man. So thanks a lot for being transparent. I didn't know you was going to share that. Thanks for being authentic and being real with the audience. And he's role modeling, believe it or not, exactly what he's sharing for you to do in a very authentic way. You didn't hear him say try to persuade people. You didn't hear him say try to influence them. You didn't hear him say use these tricky words to try to twist things around. He's saying you can just be you. You can be transparent and you can be yourself. Isn't that kind of cool? So, Robert, let me first say thanks a lot for being on the Happy Entrepreneur Show, man. We appreciate you. I know you have your show, Rise and Grind. I know you have to teach people how to really step and tell their story so they can step into their greatness. I want to give it over to you, man, to share your closing comments to inspire or to empower folks. In a few moments, these lights will go off. And life is waiting on the other side. And somebody's listening to this at the gym right now. A mom might be driving in their car. Someone's cooking and maybe listening to this right now. What would be your words to inspire and empower them to be the best version of themselves?
Is, what would you do for free? It's like, what would you do without getting paid for it? Because when I started doing fitness, I was just working with a couple people that I knew for free. We would meet up in my garage, start throwing some weights around. Even when I started speaking, I was speaking in schools for free just because I enjoyed doing it. Like, I enjoyed helping people, watching people have their breakthroughs, reaching milestones, talking to the students and them actually listening. Because we all know, especially nowadays, kids get distracted very easily. But to sit there and give your speech and to have them dialed in, to have them asking questions, have them coming up after class to thank you for coming in and talking, like, find that thing. What is that thing for you? And then once you find it, lean into it, right? Don't put blocks on yourself. Because I did that in the beginning with fitness, thinking, again, I don't have a degree. I don't know about marketing. I don't know about business or accounting. And then it hit me, like, I managed restaurants for 20 years. And guess what I did as a restaurant manager? I did hiring. I did HR policies. I did sales forecasting, profit and loss statements, income estimates. I placed orders. I tracked inventory. It's like I did so many more things that I didn't even realize were that important, because you put these blinders on. I'm sorry, you put these blockers up because I don't have this, so I can't do that. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. Like Shay asked me a couple mental health questions, and I'm not a mental health counselor. I'm not a therapist, but in my opinion, I knocked those answers out of the park. Right. And why? Because I've been alive for almost 49 years. I've worked with thousands of people around the world, and I pay attention. I pay attention when people talk. I pay attention to how people interact with other people, body language, tone of voice. And all of that stuff allowed me to put together my programs to where I can help people lose weight. I can help people run a faster 5K. I can help people tell their stories. So whatever greatness looks like to you, find that one thing that you would do for free, lean into it, and then you'll be surprised the doors and the opportunities that open for you when you do that. And if you need help putting that story together, reach out. Let me know. I'm here for you.
And you can reach him on Facebook at Robert B. Foster. Again, Robert B. Foster. And what is your email one more time, Robert?
Yep, it's rob@robertbfoster.com.
Well, once again, thank you all for being on the Watching the Happy Entrepreneur Show. We appreciate you. Thank you so much, Robert, for being here as well. And I want you to know as you leave out that you're amazing. You're already incredible, and that today indeed is your January 1st. And for you, your best is still yet to come, because today is your January 1st, right? Your best is still yet to come. Your best is still yet to come. With that being said, my name, by the way, is Shay Brown, the Happy Entrepreneur. Make it a great day, everyone. And I promise you from the bottom of my heart, we'll make some good things happen. We connect again next time. Remember this, though. Time is long. Life, on the other hand, is very, very short. So you got to live in that moment, and you got to make it count. God bless me. Wish you success. Thanks a lot, Rob. We out of here. See y'all later. Peace.